commercial or human friendly operation. That is not possible. At the same time, the robot which are using in industry, it can make troubles to human. At the same in the sense, what how I'm saying is, you have to program the safety precautions before you start the production. So a safety mat should be made, safety fence should be made. So these are the conditions to monitored all the time to ensure the safety of the working operators or supervisors in and then and there the robotic cells, nearby cells. If we fail to make the safety things, then definitely it will make some injury to the human. But while coming to commercial aspects, we got so many robots deployed in the market. It will never harm the human beings, or it will never make any damages to any articles. So robot is always designed in those kind of environments. Based on application, there are so many robots. We'll discuss everything in details, and the programming methods, what we have in and out, everything we'll discuss. And the first and foremost is the word mechatronics. Coming to the slide, this mechatronics is it's a German word. German word, actually, it has been developed or derived by this sorry, Escava Electrical Corporation. This Escava is one of leading robot manufacturer in the market. As Access Global Automation is being a partner with Escava groups, we usually do only with Escava robots. But in market, there are so many brands of robots are available, right from ABB, Escava, Kuka, Nachi. So like this, there are so many robots in the market. But as a business relationship, we only deal with Escava robots. I'm saying about Access Global Automation, right? So while going to industrial sectors, we got various applications of robots, right from welding, assembling, cleaning, coating, dispensing, material handling, and then spot welding. So it is one of the second largest company in this American sectors, right? So what is the uniqueness in this robot? Okay, so there are so many robots available in market, right? Among those, why Yaskawa is quite unique, because it has got its own patent in developing the ARC robot with all the wires and cables in the top and the upper arm. While you consider other robots, maybe it's a Panasonic or ABB or Nachi, the wires and cables which goes to the end of the robot, usually call it as end effector. When it goes to the end, the wires has to be routed in a specific channel out of the robot. If the wires will not go inside the robot. But Motoman, particular Escava developed Motoman, it's a 1D patented robot which has all the wires, cables, everything inside the robot body itself. So when we see a robot, it will be very neat and tidy. We don't have much of hassle. We will be in a hassle-free environment to connect all the cables in a very good way. So this is the uniqueness of their robot. And then they have developed a humanoid robot with 15 axis, 7-axis robot. Seventh axis is used for portability of a whole robot from one end to other end. So many milestones have been crossed by this Yaskawa people, right? So apart from that, we'll just go into the technical aspects. While discussing about the robot previously, we said like it is a programmable machine. So this slide just depicts about the direct definition for a robot. It automatically controlled reprogrammable multi-purpose manipulator with one or more axis, and it is usable for mobile for industrial automation application. So it can be able to transport based on the application. It can be able to reprogram, and it is a multi-purpose manipulator, right? So with one robot, you can able to do at least 4 or 5 different kind of operations, right? So this is a basic definition of robot. And while developing a robot, as I said you before, we got certain rules and regulations while developing a robot. The first and foremost thing is the robot which we are developing, it should not injure any human beings. The second most important thing is it should obey the orders that is being made by the humans, okay, or it should be according to the program what it is being written by the humans. It should not go void. It should not go away from the program what we have written, right? The third most rule while developing a robot is the robot should protect itself and it should not make any harm to itself as well as others. This is one of the major constraints. So coming back to the third point alone, the robot must protect its own existence or it should protect itself. How a robot can protect itself? Can anyone have a vision like how a robot will protect on its own? Can anyone share an idea on that? The first and the second point, everyone will be clear about it. It should not injure any human being, and as well as it should obey all the orders in the form of programs as written by the programmer. Okay, no issue. The third one, the robot must protect on its own. How it is possible?
With the help of sensors.
What kind of sensors?
With the help of sensors.
What kind of sensors? What kind of problems will the robot get without the presence of sensor?
Proximity or touch sensor.
Okay. Proximity or touch sensor for what?
In case any one of a object or human being comes under nearby, they will sense and they will react.
Suppose if I am creating a robot program to pick a iron piece from one place and place it at the other place. For that, I have to go for a proximity sensor to detect the presence of a iron. In such a condition, how can we distinguish like this is a part I have to pick up or it is going to hit me or something like that? Are you getting my question?
Yes, I understood.
Yes.
Say, okay, it take confusions at the time.
That's what I'm saying. Protect itself. So it is based on sensors, that's right. But the sensor what you told is not right.
The voice is breaking, sir.
Is it clear now? When I ask you the question how it protects about itself, the answer is exactly it's based on sensors. That's right. But the sensor, what you prefer like going for a touch sensor or a proximity sensor. That is not the right answer. Actually,
Okay.
protects itself is based on a sensor, but it is not based on proximity or touch sensor.
Okay, sir.
Any other try?
I think cube interface is one of the option in inbuilt the robot. So if cube interface is programmed, so within that limit, within that cube limit, the robot can be moved. I think that is one of the precaution method.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, you are from which department, ma'am? Robotics department?
No, sir, I'm from EC department.
Okay. Actually, how you know about this cubic interface and all?
Because I learned
Okay.
from my college while I'm studying, I learned that.
Okay. Actually, is a cubic interface is quite different from its own safety. I'll tell you what cubic interface is, and I'll later explain you about the safety. This cubic interface is nothing but suppose I'm interfacing my robot with one more machine. Okay. The machine when let me tell like this. The machine has a part inside. Robot has to go and pick the part and take it outside. This is my actual operation. So I'll make a cubic interface like when the robot is going inside the machine, the machine should not harm the robot.
Yes.
So I'll make three major points where this robot, when it coming inside the machine should go to the stop mode. It should not operate. Okay. So this cubic interface plays a major point on robot safety. That's correct. But it is not like it is protecting on its own.
Okay.
This cubic interface will be programmed by a programmer, right? But quite happy like you come across some major points of robot. This particular cubic interface is being executed by the site engineers, robotic engineers, while installation or programming and at the time of commissioning. Up to this level, if you're coming across a robot, then it's quite a good one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm giving you the explanation for its protection. Robot, at the each and every axis we got sensors, and those sensors we used to call it as how to say, like mm, sorry, I just forgot. Sorry, I didn't get the exact name, but it will, what the sensor used to do is, it will, if a robot goes and hits an environment, there will be a torque generating on its arm. Okay, and based on the torque limit, if the torque limit is higher than the specific levels, then the robot will not move beyond the points. Okay, this is what but the exact name of the sensor I got. It is there in the mind, it's not coming out. This is the problem. Okay, later I'll tell you the exact name of the sensor. But while considering its
Optical
environment,
encoder, sir.
no, it's not optical encoder. Uh,
I think optical encoder is used in a servo motor
yes.
application.
Encoders and all will be dealt with servo motors for exactly determining the position of a robot. So it's not because of collision sensor, right? I got the word. So there will be collision sensors in each and every axis of the robot. It randomly, it may be a industrial robot or a humanoid robot or whatever it may be. So collision sensors will be there at each and every axis. So if there is any collision, the torque value of the particular axis go beyond the limit. Okay, then the robot will not move. The robot will stop immediately. Okay, so the collision sensor rating will be different for each and every robot based on its application. For example, I'm saying if it is an industrial robot, the collision detection range will be comparatively higher than a humanoid robot, because if it is a humanoid robot, if it hits a robot, if it hits a machine, sorry, a human being, the collision detection should be in a minimum value. If there is a small collision itself, the robot has to stop. So in those kind of situations and applications, this collision sensor torque value will be taken into account, and then based on that, the robot will protect on its own. It will not hit anything, and it won't be getting damage on its own. It is not possible. So this is one of the major factor while designing a robot. We used to we the robotic manufacturer companies will consider, right? So these are the laws. And then, what are the parameters? While designing a robot, what are the basic parameters we have to consider? And based on our application, what kind of robots we have to select? This is the next major constraint that we have to consider, right? So if I'm going to select a robot for one of my application, okay, I'll just play a video for you. You tell me how to select a robot. Okay, you can, in the screen you can see the parameters, right from degrees of freedom, working envelope, kinematics, payload, speed, acceleration, accuracy, repeatability, compliance. Out of these parameters, some play a major role. This one has to be considered very important before selecting a robot, right? So I'll explain you how to select a robot, but before that, you just go ahead with the video. After this video, we'll discuss further. Okay. I think everyone can see my screen, right? I'll play the video now. You just go through this one and then we'll later discuss about the parameters. Okay. So by on observing this video, which part you feel like it's very challenging for a robot to make it happen? Can anyone explain me on seeing this video?
End effector, sir.
End effector. Okay. Anything else?
பேக்கேஜ் வந்து டிஃபரெண்ட் பொசிஷன்ல இருக்கு.
Okay, that's a good observation.
அது அது வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா உங்களுக்கு டிஃப்ரெண்ட் பொசிஷன் இருக்கிறத எடுத்து கரெக்டான பொசிஷனில் வந்து உங்களுக்கு வந்து அதை பிளேஸ் பண்ணுது.
Okay, that was a good observation, sir. Next, anyone?
Payload, sir.
Payload. Okay, ma'am.
Type of material to be handled, sir.
Type of material to be handled. Okay, sir.
Job location sensitivity.
Job location purila, sir. How far you are saying it is job location?
Job location sensitive, sir. Because of different shape, the job is located. That's why.
Okay. The job is not in a orientation. Each and every time it is at a different place. Okay, I
Yeah,
understand.
the end effector will sense you what is the exact position of the job.
Okay, I understand, sir. Anything else? Okay.
Body
So,
weight, sir.
Weight of what, ma'am? Weight of what?
Body weight.
I mean the job that is being picked up weight or the robot weight?
Robot weight.
Okay. So the on observation of this video, I can able to interpret, like you can able to understand what are the factors we must consider before going for robot selection. One of the person, they say the payload, right? The job of weight of the job has to be considered. Okay, and then the next is on the accuracy. The job is being placed at different positions, but still the robot can go and pick it up very accurate. Okay, and then I think most of the people have not noticed this. The first and the foremost is the working envelope. How far the robot can go, and but suppose if the job is placed out of the conveyor, I mean there is a tray on the top, right? So if the job is placed out of the table, then robot cannot definitely pick the object, right? So while considering a robot selection, we must consider three major parameters. The first and foremost is the working envelope. I mean it has to be explainedly said as, just a minute. Okay, so this working envelope, we usually call it as on the reach. So this reach is very important. So from the axis of the robot, how far it can go and pick a product. So if I'm going to interface with the machine, the robot can how far go and pick the object from the machine and place it in the conveyor or in the next machine or some other place. It doesn't matter. So the reach plays a major role. The first and the foremost is the reach. And then the second one is the payload. So what is the maximum picking capability of the robot? Say my object is about 10 kg and I'm going to select a robot for 12 kg. It is not correct, because for picking a 10 kg object, you are going to make an end effector. One person say end effector. Okay, end effector is a major constraint. While picking an object, we have to design an end effector, and that end effector itself has its own weight. Okay, for picking a 10 kg object, we have to design an end effector, and that end effector will cost about 4 to 5 kg. Then the total weight comes around 15 kg. Then you cannot able to select a 12 kg robot. It's not possible. So you have to go for the next one. So while considering the robot, the second major point is the payload. Then the third major point is the center of gravity. It is not mentioned here. Actual arrangement of the third major part is the center of gravity. Center of gravity in the sense, I'm having a 6-axis robot. Okay, the robot is placed at its home position. Okay, when it is at home position, where is the center of gravity of that robot will be present? At which point will the center of gravity of the robot will be present?
Degree of freedom.
Degree of freedom is nothing but the number of axes, ma'am. It's not based on the center of gravity. Actually I'll show you one more picture to describe the center of gravity. Okay, so that you can understand better. So I cannot able to open the image.
இருமா குணால் சாப்பிடலாம் குணால் சாப்பிடலாமா
Okay, consider this as the robot. Okay, for this robot, this is the home position. Okay, so the center of gravity will be very near to its body, around somewhere around here at this point. Okay, suppose if I'm going to pick an object at a distance of here, and the length of the object is somewhat very lengthier, if it is like this, okay, robot is going to pick at the center at this point. So the object center of gravity and the robot center of gravity should be very close to the body of the robot. Okay, somewhere around here or somewhere around here. Then only we can able to pick the object. Suppose if the center of gravity is not near to the robot, if the center of gravity is around here, then totally our robot will collapse. So while defining or while selecting a robot, we have to consider these three major factors. One is payload, how much weight the robot can lift. We have to select the robot based on the payload of the based on the weight of the job. Second one is the reach. How long should robot go and pick the object? So this we call it as reach. And the third one is the center of gravity. So the center of gravity should always remain very close to the robot. Then only the robot can run in an efficient way as well as in a very faster way. So these three factors has to be considered before selecting a robot. So this one. Rest of the factors is a parameter, like speed is a parameter, acceleration, how fast it can accelerate is a parameter, accuracy of a robot is around 80 microns for Escava. I'm saying if I'm calling to position 1 and after 100 times of rounding here and there, if I'm calling back to position 1 again, the robot will be at an accuracy of 80 microns. Okay, the position will not vary. And then the repeatability also comes the same factor. And the compliance, these are basic parameters. It will not affect for selecting a robot. The basic parameters which affect for robot selection is this one, this payload, reach, and then the center of gravity. The degrees of freedom, it is nowadays usually all the robots comes with 6-axis robot. Okay, usually based on if I'm going for industrial application, definitely customer will go for 6-axis. They are not ready to go for 4-axis or 3-axis robot, because while comparing the price, the 6-axis robot is quite cheaper than the rest of the axis, because the volume they produce, they manufacture 6-axis robots is quite higher. So that's what usually everyone goes for 6-axis. So these are the factors or the parameters while we have to consider while selecting a robot. Okay, any questions you have in this? The next we can go to the programming part. Before that, if you have any questions, you can ask me. Okay, then I'll move to the next part. How to classify a robot? What all the hardware configurations of a robot? Programming a robot is very simpler. It's very easy. Everyone can program, because it is a machine language. It just comes at move or stop or wait, move L, move J, only these kind of basic steps. But making the initial settings of robot is quite complex. Only trained official or the skilled person can alone do these kind of operations, right? So based on the parameters I have discussed with you, The maximum range of the robots available in Yaskawa is this one. The maximum payload the robot Yaskawa robot can handle is 900 kg. So this is the maximum thing they have been producing. And then the vertical reach is 6200 mm. Okay, around 6 meters it can reach. And then the horizontal reach is 4.5 meters, 4.6 meters it can reach. And they are producing up to 15 axis robots. And this is kindly this one is not a major constraint for us, because mass of a robot we don't want to consider a lot. Weight of the robot is not a major factor. Okay, so we have to be very consistent, or we have to be very careful on selecting the robot based on the weight of the job, not weight of the robot. Okay, so these are the specifications of Yaskawa robots Motoman series right now at present. Okay, so as I said you before, while considering the robot installation, the anatomy or the construction of robot is the major part, or the part which has to be considered with higher attention is this one. So only skilled persons can able to do this kind of operation. Rest programming is not that much complex. Everyone can do it. Is very easier, right? So while considering the robot anatomy, we got three major components. One is the controller. Okay. The next one is the manipulator, and next one is the end effector. So these were the three major components of a robot. Only with this we can able to design our required robot cell, or the project what we are executing, right? So the drives and the sensors are the supporting components that is required for the robot to perform our operations what we required. So these were not major. The three major components is this one: controller, manipulator, and end effector. Without this, we cannot able to control any robot operations. It's not possible, right? So while going to the controller kind of thing, as I discussed with you previously in the automation section, this controller is a combination, or is a controlling terminal of the robot. We got 6 servo. If it is considered to be a 6-axis robot, we got 6 servo motors connected all over its body. So all these 6 servo motors has to be controlled from a controlling terminal, and all the 6 servo drives, all the motors will be driven by a drive, like what we have discussed in a variable frequency drive. A motor is usually driven by a drive. So for servo motor, we got a specific drive called servo drive. So all the 6 servo motors will be controlled with the help of servo drives, individual servo drives, right? So all the individual servo drives will be placed compact inside this controller. This is the major part where all the 6 servo drives will be placed inside. Only apart from servo, we got so many other communication factors also, right? So with the servo, we can able to get one wire for connecting robot with the manipulator, that is for servo encoder, and other wire for the power. From totally as a whole, even if you consider other robots also, not only Yaskawa, if you go for Kuka or Panasonic or any other robot, from controller we got 2 wires to robot. One is encoder wire and one is power wire. This power wire will give drive will give connection between the drive and the manipulator, I mean the robot. All the power going to the robot will be through this, either the 340 volt or 110 volt. It is based on the robot manufacturer, it will be different, it is not constant. And the next one is the encoder cable. Encoder cable is quite constant. Every robot will have encoder cable. The encoder used here will be absolute encoder. It is not incremental type. It is not possible, as we have to save the memory of the position where robot is right now present. The usage of incremental encoder is null here. We cannot use. We always use absolute encoder in the servo robots here. So this is the thing. So this controller is being the brain of the robot arm, right? So it can be able to interface with third-party machines also. If I want to able to interface. If I want to interface this one with a PLC, it can be done. Out of this servo drives, we have extra IO modules attached to this controller. So the reason for extra IO modules is without PLC also the robot can operate. The robot got inbuilt PLC controller in its this particular DX200, or based on the robot it may differ. Controller may differ. So each and every controller has its own controlling options. So it can independently run without PLC stations. So for that, normally a PLC used to have input and output cards. So all those input and output modules will be present inside this controller. There will be terminating points, and all the inputs what we need to give to the robot, I mean the sensor, to detect an object. If only sensor detects the object, the robot can come and pick. So the sensor is an input. So this input will be given to the controller, and then robot will come to the position. To pick an object, we need to use a end effector, and the end effector will be a pneumatic end effector, or to either a 2-finger gripper or a 3-finger gripper. So to activate that end effector, we need an output from the controller. For that, we can use an output module also. So like this, based on a requirement, we can have up to 512 number of inputs and 512 number of outputs. In Escava, I'm telling you like this. So based on brands, if it is Kuka or something other, the number of input and output will get vary. It is not constant. So, and one more major thing is the controller will be connected to a teach pendant. So this one is a teach pendant. This teach pendant is a major interface to for the operator to the Escava controller. Only with the help of this teach pendant, we can able to jog the robot, or you can able to make the programming controls, or you have to make some safety programs. Everything has to be done from this teach pendant. Only way to make this, only through this teach pendant. With the teach pendant only you can able to perform all the operations, right? So this controller is being the major part. The next thing what I have to discuss is this manipulator. Manipulator is nothing but the 6-axis robot. The technical term for denoting this is not robot, it is a manipulator. This manipulator, we got so many types of manipulator available in market. Either it is a 6-axis or 4-axis or even 7-axis. The 7th axis can be even external. So these kind of manipulators are right now available, but most of the time while working in an industrial platform, we prefer 6-axis robots. Okay. Then the manipulator joints. This is one of the major thing you have to come across while discussing a robot. So this manipulator is going to move forward and reverse. It will be moving in a rotational way. So while moving in a linear movement, I mean translational movement, two types of joints will be present. One is linear joint, I mean to make the movement forward and reverse in this way. And then the second kind of joint is the orthogonal point. This orthogonal point is present at the axis U axis. I'll show you where the U axis is. You see here? So this one is the U axis. So at this particular axis, the robot will move linearly as well as in the rotational axis. So this particular point is called orthogonal point, orthogonal joint. And then for rotary motion, we got rotational joints, twist joints, and revolving joints. So these three axes will be U, R, and T. R, B, and T. Okay. So this one is the rotational axis. This one is B axis. This will be also in rotational motion, and this one is T axis. This will be in rotation. So all these three axes will be always in the rotation. It will not make any linear movements. So these three axes will come under this category. So while discussing this manipulator, you have to you have to have some basic knowledge on the movement of the robot, how these joints will be moving. So for that, I made this slide for you. It is for manipulator joints, right? And then the major part comes here is the end effector. Okay, end effector, it is different for different projects. Suppose if I'm going to work in a welding project, then at the end effector, you have to make a welding torch at the end of the robot, right? If I'm going to use it for a pick and place application like this, what you are seeing now. So here we have to use this grippers. We used to call it as grippers, multi-finger grippers or 3-finger, 4-finger. Based on the object, then we have to select the grippers. For some object, it is sufficient to pick at 2 points. For some object, we have to go for 3 points. So based on the requirement, we have to select the number of fingers in the gripper. So this is in case of material handling. And then if you are going for a paint application, the end effector should be changed as a paint spraying machine. I mean the spraying jet has to be installed at the end effector. And then if you are going for a palletizing application in the sense very big cotton boxes has to be pick and placed in a rack. For that we used to call that application as a palletizing application. So for those palletizing applications, we have to select grippers in a different way. For example, you cannot able to go only with this kind of fingers. You have to also pick at the top surface. So we have to prefer some vacuum grippers at the top. So vacuum has to be also deployed. At the same time, these kind of fingers also has to be deployed to give support at the surface of the cotton, to give support on the surface of the cotton box. So like this, there are various end grippers are available in the market. Based on our requirement, we have to select the end effector. Okay. For end effector case, I'll show you a video now for this palletizing application. The rest of the applications you might have been well versed, either it is a welding or material handling. So this palletizing is quite a different word. Maybe for some of the people it's quite different. So I'll show you a video for that. Just have a look on this. So this particular robot, it is called a GP180 robot. This we have installed in one of our customer at Pondicherry site, Arasan Soap. We have executed this project. You just go through this video and then we'll discuss later. Okay, thanks. So I'll play one more time for your observation. Right. So in this application, this is called this is what we call this palletizing application. This cotton boxes will be kept on in a tray below, and each and every row the robot will move and place it on the top surface. It will make around 5x4 columns, something like that, in a matrix format, array of placing the cotton boxes. So for these kind of applications, you might have seen the end gripper, like it is quite different, right? It is a combination of both pneumatic as well as vacuum grippers on the top. So based on the application, we have to select exactly the kind of gripper what we need to choose. So that plays a major role in the end effector. At the same time, this 4 boxes, as I said you, this robot is GP180. GP180 in the sense it can be able to handle about 180 kg payload. GP is general purpose. So it is a general purpose robot which can handle a payload of about 180 kg. This is the meaning for GP180. So based on the payload, we have selected this robot as well as the end effector, right? So if we got any questions on this basic end effector, manipulator, and then this controller, you can ask me. So any questions on this? If not, then we'll move to further. Any questions? I think the session is going very bored. After lunch, it's quite very difficult for everyone to come and sit in a seminar like this and then get involved into the topics. Is it so? Am I audible?
Yeah, clear. It's clear.
Okay. So if got any questions, you can post me. Otherwise, I will move further. Thanks. Okay. So then the next comes on is the sensors. What happened? Okay, the drive and the sensor. So the drive is being a major role, as I said you previously. While designing a robot, most of the time it will be based on servo drives, and servo we got 6 axis, 4 axis, 3 axis, everything. So out of servo drive, in some cases there are some other drives are also available. One is hydraulic and other one is pneumatic. Okay, electrical is what I told you. It will be done with the help of servos. So at sometimes for hydraulic and pneumatic, the hydraulic, in which kind of applications we can use hydraulic, in the sense for very heavy load kind of applications. For example, it has to lift a huge container or a huge for granite applications and all. Granite cutting and chamfering and polishing, for these kind of applications we cannot use normal industrial robot. So for these kind of huge heavy load applications, you'll go for hydraulic, and for pneumatic of very minimal load applications. If it is going to be a small medical kind of applications where the weight of the object will be very less than 1 kg or in few grams, for those kind of application we can able to build a drive with pneumatic cylinders. So that's I have explained you already. So preferably a drive system for electric, and hydraulic for high power and lifting capability for heavy load applications, and pneumatic for smaller robots, material transfer kind of application. So where weight will be a very minimal way, maybe in few grams. For those we can use pneumatics. Okay, and then finally the sensors. So as I said you, the sensors play a major role to detect the environmental as well as to detect the collision, everything. So we got so many sensors by default. We got collision sensor. Out of collision sensor, we got so many sensors available in market for determining the environmental conditions, like such as light and sound also can be given as an input for robot, and based on that the robot will make decisions on its own. And these sensors will be connected directly to the controller. Also I've given you this information while discussing with the controller part. Based on the inputs from the sensors, the robot will do its own operations, right? And then here we got one more vision sensor for pick and place applications. The first video what I played you on robot for describing the parameters itself has a 3D vision camera on the top. I don't know how many of you noticed that, but now I'll play you one more video. You go through the video very carefully and tell me how the robot is going to pick the object in a bin, right? So this video will be very useful for you. You just have a look at this. Okay, I think everyone can see the video page, right? So I'll play the video now to just have a observation. Okay, so on seeing this particular video, you can consider three major points. One is the three-axis third dimension vision sensor that will be installed on the top of the tray. We usually call it as 3D vision sensor. And then the second one is the gripper. Okay, the gripper utilized here is not a normal gripper. It is a servo gripper. The servo gripper will just while it goes inside the job, it will just open it up, and based on the torque, the servo opening will be controlled. And then the next major thing is the X and X, Y, Z position transformation to the robot. The 3D sensor installed on the top of the tray, it will just scan the tray, and it will tell you which object to pick, the next object to be picked with the X, Y, and Z variant. For a robot to go, and for any object, not only a robot, for any object, if you want to mention a dimension of this, you will be telling in 3-dimensional way, X, Y, Z. So this 3-dimensional values from the 3D vision camera will be transferred to the robot, and from the robot it will be transferred. The robot will make movement according to it, and then it will goes to the object to pick. And when it's reached there, the servo grippers will activate, and then it is transferring the job. It is not quite easier to configure these kind of operations. It is not a very normal operation that is happening in the industrial applications right now in India. This particular technology has to be done with very heavier costs. Okay, but in India, we have not made any kind of applications like this as of my knowledge. But in major other countries, there are proven solutions were available, but the cost of this technology, it's quite very high. So for installing this 3D camera and all, with this 3D camera, price will be very equal to a single robot. So for these kind of constraint, the customers here in India is not moving to the next level. This one is next level of automation, right? So instead of that, what we are right now doing is we make an orientation of the job in a linear way. So instead of going and picking at the bin, we'll make conveyor, and the conveyor will have the job. It will be always at one particular point. The robot will always go and pick at the particular point. It is cost effective, but at the same time, it is a space consuming one. If you make a conveyor and input conveyor and output conveyor, everything consumes much space. But when we go for the bin picking technology, it consumes very less space. At the same time, the price is higher. So this is the factor, right? So these kind of external sensors, we can able to collaborate with robots and then give signals to the robot to go and access the region. So this is also possible. Okay. So this is in case of the sensors, right? So out of this, if you got anything to ask me, either in the videos what you have seen, if you got anything to question up, then you can rise up. Otherwise, we'll move next. So while considering a robot, we got 6 major axes. We usually call it as SLU RBT. So S axis at the base, it rotates in a rotational way of 360. Even though it rotates 360, the robot cannot access 360 degree. The maximum accessible is 270. Only 270 degrees it can access. It is not possible to exactly go behind an axis. It is not possible. Right now, 360 degree robot in Yaskawa Motorman series we don't have. And then the L axis, this is the longitudinal axis. It will move in a linear way. For that we are using this one. And then U axis got linear as well as rotational. R is rotational, B is rotational, and T is rotational. This T at the T axis only we used to attach this end effector and all. Okay. So this is the hardware of robot. So for each and every axis we got a servo motor based on the load, based on the robot capacity. So as x-axis we got servo, so we got 6 axes, so we got 6 servo motors incorporated together to form this robot. So this is the basic hardware setup of the robot, right? So while coming to the programming, there are so many programming methods available right now. As it is equivalent to PLC, we got so many programming methods for each and every robot. Manufacturer, maybe Yaskawa or a KUKA or a, whatever it may be, ABB, any robot, they don't have a common nomenclature. So initially they started with task in the plain English. They used to type, okay, robot move to position 1, robot move to position 2. This is called as task in plain English. I'll show you the programming method like this. So move to position 1, move to position 2, close gripper, move to position 4. So these kind of operation were made initial, but this caused major problems in the interfacing. I mean, the robot cannot understand each and everyone's commands. It is not possible. So it's quite difficult to interface. Then next method we come across, everyone started accepting is this one, assembly language. This one is quite easy for everyone, as well as standard commands have been pre-programmed, so that each and every one cannot able to give their own words. So it will be easy for robot to understand. So right now in Yaskawa we use these kind of variable assembly language. Almost in most of the robot, either it is a KUKA robot or Panasonic robot, it will be very similar to this, but the keywords will be different. In Yaskawa we are using move, but in Epson or some other company robot, it will be in a different way, maybe a jump or a call, something like that. So the method will be very similar to this. So for example, I'm telling you here, I'm just explaining a basic program. Initially the robot will be at a home position, so we usually call it as P1 position. This one is home. Okay, irrespective of the operation 1 has completed, then robot will come to home. All the operations will be started from its origin position, I mean a home position. So this one we usually name it as P1. Then from P1 it has consider this one has to, you see here we are waiting for some external inputs. So this may be considered as a gripper. Okay, so consider this program has been written for a pick and place application. From home position the robot will move to position 2. I mean this is a before picking position. Okay, from position 2 the robot will move slowly to the picking position. Okay, usually it will be like that, because in a factor like while moving to the picking position it should not hit the object. So for considering that in a major factor, from position 2 to position 3 the robot will be moving in a very slow motion, right? So after the picking position is reached, it will activate the gripper, wait for input to become 1. Okay, this is usually controlled from a PLC. The gripper is activated and the robot will wait for the signal whether it is activated or not, whether the gripper is closed or not. So if I give close signal from PLC, the gripper will be closed and the sensor input will be fed back to the controller. Whether the gripper is closed, we will get the feedback. This feedback is being given back to the controller, and when the particular finger is closed, it will be made as 1. I mean high, right? So it confirms like the gripper has already gripped the part. And then the next one to the new position called P4. After gripping has done, the robot will move to the position P4. It will be also in a very slow motion, because usually the job will be in a die or machine or any third party accessories, something like that. So after gripping, the robot initially will move out in a slower way. Okay, we usually call it as after pick position. So this P4 is after pick. So after pick, then from P4 to P5, it may be the position 5 may be in a conveyor or a bin or in some other machines. So for that it can move in a rapid way, no issues. So to make the process in a faster way. So for that we'll make it to a new position called P5. It will be in a rapid way. It will move in a rapid way. And after going to that position, then open the gripper and drop the object. So it will wait for the PLC will give command to the gripper to open. The robot will again here wait for the signal. So here it has already activated, since the gripper has already part in it. While opening, the grippers will be in a state called 0. So if the sensors were made off, the signal will go to the controller, and then robot will make decision. After this wait is done, then it will go to the home position again. From here the control goes to here again. So this is a cyclic process. So for pick and place application, these kind of operations will alone persist. So for programming robot, That's not a major concern. If you go through a very big project, even I'm saying a very big project, so many robots were there and so many controls were there. If you go across the program, these kind of steps alone will be there. There is no step beyond this one. Either move operation or wait operation or transfer operation, or if there is some data comparison. So these kind of operation, it's not a major part. So programming is quite simpler, or it's quite easier for one to analyze. The bigger challenge is the initial settings and the configurations. As we discussed previously, the gripper, end gripper, and then end effector, and robot weight calculation, that plays a major role for selecting a robot, right? So this I'll show some other robot programming also. So this is, I have, as I said you before, this is a programming method for Yaskawa robot, and there is one more robot called Epson. I have also included the Epson program here. Yes, instead of move in Epson we got jump, the instruction called jump. So instead of move instruction we got jump instruction, and say similarly we got wait on vacuum, off vacuum. This is in reference to the gripper. So on the vacuum or off the vacuum. After that it goes to the desired position. Then this one is function end. After this one has happened, the loop has to be controlled to the next one. It is a cyclic operation. So it goes to jump again to P1. So from P1 again the pointer will come again, instruct, will execute all this, and then the program pointer will go here again. It is very similar to the C or C++, but the programming language is the machine level language. We usually call this one as machine language, machine learning. Okay, so this is the thing for programming methods. So out of this, you see, initially was like this, and then we changed to the new method. Apart from this, we got robo fourth method, inform 3 method. So each and everything is their own programming method. As I said you, this one variable assembly language, this method is being accepted by all of the companies or the manufacturers in the world. Yaskawa, Panasonic, everyone use this method. So Epson, I have shown you an example for programming the Epson robot. So this one is a different robot. Robo4 and Info3 is a different robot. So they, each and every manufacturer, they have their own keywords. That's it. Right. So if got any questions here, you can post me. Then we'll move to further. Can you play a video? I got so many industrial applications videos for robot, because since Axis we deal with industrial robotic projects. We work on various applications, right from palletizing, painting, pick and place. Right. So I'll play one more video for pick and place, right? So this particular application is pick and place application. We usually call it as this one as machine tending for CNC. Okay. So for this robot, we have installed GP12. this unit we used to call it as auto gauging. I'll tell you the usage of this later in the video. Auto gauging. After gauging completed, if the part is okay, then it will be transferred to the next operation. Right. So this application we used to call it as machine tending application. It is a material handling. It comes under the category of material handling. So from these are the major projects we used to handle in all the manufacturing sectors. So nowadays, getting manpower, manpower for operating the CNC machines, it's quite difficult. So at one particular time, I told there is a process called auto gauging. Right, I'll show you here one more time. This one we used to call it as auto gauging. Auto gauging is one of the current trend that is being installed in most of the manufacturing units. I'll tell you the reason for this kind of operation. Even though we install a robot, without this auto gauging, what the operator has to do is the CNC machine will be running all the day. The machine got so many tools in its for its operation. The tool will definitely got some problems. It may be worn out or the product coming out from the CNC machine will not be exactly as the dimension required as per the drawing. It will not be there. So what the operator will do is he will come down and check the output job randomly whether it is as per the drawing or not. So if there is any deviation from the drawing, he used to make some tool correction in the CNC machine. But what we have installed here is this auto gauging machine will detect the deviation, how far the job is being deviated. Then this particular tool correction input will be given feedback to the CNC, and then it will be corrected automatically. So there is no need of manual intervention, and we have totally eradicated all the manual interruption from the CNC machine, and this particular cell is completely automated without any manual interruption. So this is the thing. This is the current project what we have executed before 2 months, and it is being rapidly transferring to all manufacturing sectors nowadays. Right. So ultimate aim is only one thing: to increase the production without human interruption. That is the ultimate. For that, we have been working together with the manufacturers and giving the best output as far as we can. Right. So this is the process. So for this, we have gone through this kind of programming methods, right? And then I go to the types of robot. There are so many types of robot available in market. Out of those, these plays a major role: articulated, Cartesian, Polar, Scara, and Delta. Articulated robot is nothing but the robot what you have seen in the video now. It has got 6 axes, and it is completely designed on satisfying the application of industries. And then it got so many axes as per the requirement, usually 6 axes, as I told you before. It is specifically designed for industrial applications. And then the next one is, so this is the image of the articulated robot. We have already discussed about the axis, each and every axis. And then I'll go for the next. It is called Cartesian robots. Cartesian robots, it is not equivalent to articulated. Cartesian, I'll show you the image here. Yes, this is the Cartesian axis. So if I want to handle the operation in a linear movement alone, at one particular axis alone, okay, for that we can use these kind of Cartesian robots. So based on it, completely based on application, this particular robot, it cannot able to handle heavier load. This particular robot can be used for the applications like gluing application, and then welding application, very small welding application, very small, not in a big way. So majorly it is meant for gluing, and then spray painting, and then 3D art kind of works, I mean wooden carving, and then plastic engraving. So even in 3D printers nowadays, you can see this kind of Cartesian robots. If you go to Amazon and make 3D printers, all the printers has been built with the help of this Cartesian robots. So to, instead of picking and placing job and material kind of operations, this particular Cartesian robot we can able to make for without picking the job at the same floor. These kind of operations can be done, gluing, carving. So for these applications you can use this. So this is Cartesian robot. And other kind of robot we have next is polar robots. This polar robots, as I said you previously, it got only 3 axes, but at the same time the load it can handle is very huge. For example, for granite application, granite cutting and polishing applications and all, we can make use of this polar robots. It will go and pick a granite stone. The granite stone will be very huge. It will take a weight of about 3 ton to 4 ton. It can able to simply pick it up very easily, and then it will place it in the cutting machine. After cutting is done, each and every stone will be placed in the conveyor, and from conveyor to the polishing machine. And after finishing polishing, again to the pallet, wooden pallet, it will be placed in the wooden pallet, and then it will be packed up. So for these kind of applications, heavy load applications, we use these 3-axis polar robots. And then SCARA robot. SCARA robot is nothing but 4-axis robot. This particular 4-axis robot is mainly used in semicon industries. Okay, it's not in a manufacturing sector. So this we usually call it as SCARA. It can be used for semicon industrial purpose, in the manufacture of PCB, capacitors, IC chips manufacturing, or microprocessor manufacturing unit, or how can you say, in the hard disk manufacturing unit. For these semicon applications, we can make use of this robot. And for this robot, we got an accuracy of 80 microns. The reach, same, everything is same. We have to check the reach and payload, and then center of gravity, right? And the major difference between the SCARA robot and the articulated robot is, SCARA robot got 4 axes, articulated got 6 axes. The rotational axis, if we need to flip any object from a vertical plane to a horizontal plane, we cannot make use of this robot. It is not possible. So flipping and all kind of operations can only be done with the help of articulated, right? So I'll play one more video for this SCARA robot. You can able to understand its operations. Yes, I think everyone can see this now. So this particular machine is the one what I'm showing here inside is a injection molding machine, and from injection molding we got 2 pallet inside. Inside got one more pallet, outside got 1 pallet. So once the operation is done, the pallet will rotate. I'll play the video now. You just see this. So I think everyone has seen this video. Actually, it's an injection molding machine. This particular component we used to call it as connectors for sensor connectors. That is being used in all the cars. This project I have executed in Singapore in one of my customer. So the videos what I am showing related to robots everywhere were installed in and around India. So this one in Singapore. Previously, the one what you showed was Arashan soap in Pondicherry, and like that, it's case to case. We got so many customers in and around the world, so we have done so many projects. So for this particular application, we have to go only for this SCADA robot. We cannot able to install articulated robots here because the need of using articulated robot here is null. There's no need to flip the object. We just want to transfer it alone. So for that particular application, we don't want to go for articulated. It's Cartesian is much more easier. Also, the speed of a SCADA robot will be comparatively higher than the articulated robot. Articulated robot, it can go at a maximum speed of 2000 mm per second. Okay, but for this SCADA robot, the speed is much more. Even it can go even 3000 mm per second. It's possible. So the speed of this robot is quite higher. So based on application, we can select it, right? So for these semicon industrial applications, we can go with this SCADA robot. And then the next one is Delta robot. I think many of you have come across this Delta robot in YouTube videos as well as Discovery channels. The speed of the Delta robot is at maximum speed. It can able to pick around 6 to 8 flicks per second. We used to call it like that. It can able to pick and place an object, 6 object for 1 second. This is the maximum speed of the Delta robot. So this can be seen in the food processing industries where conveyor used to have some bread or some these kind of food items in or butter packets. So everything can be pick it up and place it in an orderly way. While in the production conveyor, it used to come in a random part. To arrange everything in order, we can use these kind of Delta robots. It can randomly pick the object and place it in a linear or in an arrangement way, either in a matrix format or as per the requirement we can place. For high speed pick and place applications, we can use this Delta robot. Right. At the end effector, same we can have a gripper or a suction cup or a vacuum cup. So based on the project what we are implementing, the end effector may change. It is being installed in a at the top of a structure. It is not being. If you see all other robots, every robot will be mounted on the base. Okay, this one is a inverted mounted robot. We used to call it like that. Inverted mounted robot. It is quite different from other robots. Right. So this one we used to call it as Delta robot. And then, as I said, the application of industrial robots were rapid. So for welding application, handling application, assembly operations, dispensing, processing industry, and so many applications we are using. I'll just make it in a random way. If you come across this handling application, we got machine tending, palletizing, metal machining, plastic injection molding. So this is for pick and place application. We got MH series. MH series is specifically meant for pick and place applications. So for heavy load applications and all, we can go for GP series. I'll show you the one also. Right. And then the next one is for welding application. For welding application, we got MS series. At the end, we got end effector. For each and every specific application, we got a robot. We got a series of robot. For end, how to distinguish this one is, for example, if it is a welding application, the robot controller will be loaded with the special effects or the special programming parameters of welding. And then for handling application, the program or the operating system for the handling will be different. So that is the major difference. Otherwise, the robot structure or build, everything is going to be same. The internal software architecture and nomenclature will be different for welding and handling. This is the case. Nothing other is different. Everything remains the same. So for arc welding, we got a specific robot. For arc welding, there is a specific software to handle, to interface with the power source, third-party power source. For that, there is a specific software. That's it. So rest of the thing, everything is same. This is what we are trying to say. So all the cables, everything, were inside the robot itself. There is no cables outside. Okay, on the top axis, That's what I'm trying to say about. So if you go for some other Panasonic or KUKA robot, all the cable will be coming from this way, like this. Will be coming outside. It will not go inside the axis, on the top axis. Right. So this is for arc welding robots or welding robots. So for assembly, we got so many robots. We got MH series. So MH series is specifically meant for assembly. We got 2 or even sometimes we got 15 axes together coupled with the robot arm. You can able to assemble nut and bolt and then assemble semicon parts. Everything can be done with the help of this assembly robots. And then dispensing applications for gluing application, painting application. We got specific application robots. So this particular MH series is being meant for general purpose application. You can use this application for this robot for any application. Either it may be a welding or it may be handling or it may be painting. Only thing is we give you a software that is being installed in the controller for that particular. If you are going to buy this MH series robot for welding application, then the software will be welding software installed in the controller. That's it. Right. For dispensing also we can able to use this. And then for painting alone, we got a special purpose robot. We cannot use this painting robot for any other application. If I am going to buy a robot for painting, definitely we have to go for this EPX series, because for painting there are so many factors to be considered: environmental conditions, spray speed, and then acceleration, deceleration speed. You see here the body is completely closed here. So for previous robots and all, we got some open space. The cables and trays will be in a open area. But here, if you consider a paint robot, since for painting application the spray will be done in a random way, you cannot able to expose any part of the robot in the air. So everything is completely enclosed. So also while closing every part, we'll be considering the heat exchanging unit, as well as while spraying, all the paints will be going to the surfaces and engaging the interfaces. I mean, for each and every axis will be getting locked. So on considering each and every factors for paint application, we got special robots with the EPX series. Okay. And then for processing industries, metal cutting, laser cutting, water jet cutting, for these applications we got a special robot called HP series. This HP series is specifically meant for water jet application and then laser cutting application. Right, for cutting applications we got special robots. And then a series of history. By previously we got automation history, right? Likewise, robots also got its own history. Initially, we got only single axis and then multiple axis, 3 axis, 4 axis. Right now, what we are using is the robot Motoman series, what initially was made in the year 1977. This was the first 5-axis robot. Before that, we got only 1 axis and 2 axis, something like that. Right. So I just go through this one. I think time is running out. I'll just show you the pictures of the robots, and then we'll try to close the session as fast as possible. Okay. So the first robot was made by George Devol for General Motors GM division, and then this one is you used to call this one as a cylindrical robot. Yes, here the first cylindrical robot. So this cylindrical robot can move in a cylindrical way up and down, and then it can able to rotate. So for very basic application, it was used in this Ford Motors, right? So Next is this is the first robot for pick and place. It was used for General Motors, GE. And then this one is the first robot which was drive electrically with 6 axes. First electromechanical 6 axis robot. It was designed by KUKA. So KUKA is one of the major competitor of Yaskawa. So there will be heavy competitions between KUKA and Yaskawa in and around India as well as Europe. In India, if you consider, most of the customers will prefer Yaskawa because cost is the major factor. While going to Europe and other regions, they'll prefer KUKA because cost is not a major factor. While considering the technical aspects, KUKA is quite higher comparative than Yaskawa, right? So based on the region and the market, each and every supplier, each and every manufacturer will give their best. And then the silver arm robot installed with this robot, we got installed sensors incorporated in it. We got controllers separately, and then sensors feedback will be fed back to the controllers. We got touch and pressure sensors in the grippers itself. So this particular silver arm robot was very specific. And then this one is ABB robot. Initially it was Asia, but now the commercial name of this Asia is ABB. You might have come across this name. So in major electrical appliances and wires or control panel, everywhere we can see this ABB robot. So this was from ABB side. This was the Asia IRB was the first model to be released with fully electrical driven robot, right? And then next one comes this Motoman series. This one was developed by Yaskawa. So in the year 1977, I think it has 5 axes with completely driven with again with motors. It can carry a payload of about 10 kg. So this was the first robot from Motoman Yaskawa in the year 1977. So that's it. If you have any queries on this one, we can discuss. If you want me to play videos, I can play some more videos. So you can post questions on this, on any robot aspects, nothing specific in it. So you can have some question answer sessions. I'll try to play some videos also for you for understanding. So from Axis Global Automation, we developed our own robot called Sevili. During the pandemic lockdown time 2020, we developed our own robots and given to Chengalpattu Government Hospital and Stanley Government Hospital for a social cause. So, and it was done with the help of some prestigious institution, not exactly, I think it's Hindustan College, right? Yes. So with collaboration with Hindustan College, we done these robots.
கொரோனா சிகிச்சை பெறுவோரை கவனிக்க என செவிலி என்ற பெயரில் ரோபோவை சென்னையில் உள்ள நிறுவனம் உருவாக்கியுள்ளது. நோயாளிகளின் அருகில் மருத்துவர்களும் மருத்துவ பணியாளர்களும் செல்லாமல் அவர்களுக்கு மருந்து மாத்திரை உள்ளிட்டவற்றையும் ஆலோசனைகளையும் இதன் மூலம் வழங்க முடியும். மருத்துவத்துறையினருக்கு நோய் தொற்றை தவிர்ப்பதில் இது போன்ற ரோபோக்கள் முக்கிய பங்கு வகிக்கின்றன. சென்னையைச் சேர்ந்த ஆக்சிஸ் குளோபல் ஆட்டோமேஷன் தயாரித்துள்ள இத்தகைய ரோபோக்கள் சென்னை ராஜீவ்காந்தி அரசு மருத்துவமனையில் தற்போது பயன்பாட்டில் உள்ளன. மனிதகுல கொரோனா சிகிச்சை பெறுவோரை கவனிக்க என செவிலி என்ற பெயரில் ரோபோவை சென்னையில் உள்ள நிறுவனம் உருவாக்கியுள்ளது. நோயாளிகளின் அருகில் மருத்துவர்களும் மருத்துவ பணியாளர்களும் செல்லாமல் அவர்களுக்கு மருந்து மாத்திரை உள்ளிட்டவற்றையும் ஆலோசனைகளையும் இதன் மூலம் வழங்க முடியும். மருத்துவத்துறையினருக்கு நோய் தொற்றை தவிர்ப்பதில் இது போன்ற ரோபோக்கள் முக்கிய பங்கு வகிக்கின்றன. சென்னையைச் சேர்ந்த ஆக்சிஸ் குளோபல் ஆட்டோமேஷன் தயாரித்துள்ள இத்தகைய ரோபோக்கள் சென்னை ராஜீவ்காந்தி அரசு மருத்துவமனையில் தற்போது பயன்பாட்டில் உள்ளன.
So this is completely designed by our Axis Global team. We designed the mechanical aspect as well as interfacing with the patients. For that, we got a camera at the top and then a 7-inch touchscreen at the top. So everything was done by our team. In the near future, we are in the idea to develop our own robot, own 6-axis robot. So with the collaboration of your college and your inputs, we can in the near future we can develop our own robot, maybe. Right. So apart from this, so I'll show you a welding application also. So this one is we used to call this one as a MIG welding robot. So for MIG welding interface with the power source, we got specific communication modules. We used to call it as Profinet, or sometimes DeviceNet cards will be available based on the manufacturer. It depends. So in this particular project, we have interfaced our Escava robot with a large welding machine. A large welding machine will support DeviceNet communication. So with DeviceNet communication, we are able to control the welding parameters while doing welding. Also, nowadays, what we have developed a lot is, instead of teaching the robot, we used to do the program offline based on the welding job. We used to get the drawing from the customer. We used to teach it offline and just download the program to the robot. So the robot will go directly to the point what we have done the program offline. It will go to the point. It will search for the welding point to be done. Okay, through touch sensors. We got special sensors called touch sensors. So with the help of touch sensors, robot will determine the area to be welded, and then it will detect the start and the end point of the welding region. Then it will do welding automatically. So these kind of advancements have been done over a period of time of 3 to 4 years. These have been happening in the market. So for welding applications also, there are numerous advancements have been performed, right? So apart from this, if you got any questions, you can ask me. We'll pass just 5 to 10 minutes for a question answer session. So, is there any questions? Have everyone slept down? Are you awake? So for recent advancements in technologies, you can follow us in the Twitter page and the YouTube page and Facebook page. So whenever we execute new projects and we come across new trends in technology, we used to post about it in our social media pages. You can make a note of it and you can gain knowledge through these pages. And thanks for supporting all the time. So for any training related inquiries, you can make note of this number. Mr. Muruganantham is a concerned person of this. You can contact him at any time for any kind of activities. And that's it from my side. And thank you for the session. If any questions, you can ask me. Otherwise, we'll hand over the session to the college management.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, other than industries, in which field the robots are being used nowadays, sir? Where you have demand?
That's what I have shown you in the video of the last man. Last year, we have done a robot for this COVID isolation wards. We made our own robot. So apart from that, we got a robot restaurant in Chennai. For that, we have given some technical inputs how to make a robot as a service to serve the people who come inside the hotels. For these kind of commercial applications also, robot usage of robot is now in a rapid way. Comparing to China and US, we are now in a budding stage alone. In China, there is the situation is completely changed. For most of the commercial places, robot has been already deployed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Good evening to everyone. I feel honored and privileged having an opportunity to offer thanks on this occasion. Today's FTP on smart manufacturing with robotics and automation. First of all, I would like to thank the today resource person, Mr. Kalidasan sir, project head, Axis Global Solutions, who has shared his views on Internet of Things and its applications, process control, automation tools, and robotics and its components with his busy schedule. Thank you, sir, for your valuable speech. Dear participants, we will see you on third sessions tomorrow at 9:45 itself. Thank you.